Hey everyone, it's Lori Silverman with episode 16 of Level Up with Lori. Today's show is called Can We Push Past Impossible in a Virtual Workplace? And my guest is Paul Peltier, who's an attorney. He's also certified as a PMP in the project management industry. He has a well-deserved CAPS designation, which is the professional speaker designation from the Canadian Society of Professional Speakers. And let me tell you a little bit about how I met Paul and how this topic came to be. But welcome. I'm glad you were able to join me today you're in Vancouver, right?
Well, I'm actually on a little island slightly outside of Vancouver. So if you hear birds and strange sounds, that's me. It's okay.
I will remember that for the future. But for
There you
those of
go.
you who are joining us, please just tell us who you are. First name is fine. Where you're from. Just would love to see whoever is with us today as guests. And I know that you're on a couple minute delay. That we're always a few minutes ahead of you on a live stream. But I first met Paul. It's almost like a year ago now, right? Would it have
It
been
is.
in the
Yeah,
fall, right? Right.
correct.
Paul and I work for the same event company out of Toronto, and you were the closing speaker. We were going to speak at a couple of conferences together. I always call us kind of like the roving band of
Yeah.
professional speakers. And he did a closing afternoon keynote talk that got into a story he's told many times about a bullying incident in his life. And I want to say that incident gave me permission the next morning to talk about something that had happened to me. Hey, John, glad that you could join us from Nebraska. But it was an eye opener for me that someone could talk so openly, and that and for those of you who don't know, my 62nd birthday was yesterday. But it took until, yeah, I know. It took until I was like 61 years old to have permission to even talk about this situation, which had happened a few years earlier. But today we're going to talk about what I call the story behind the story, the backstory, because I didn't realize that with what Paul was sharing with us, that there were like stories before it. And I think that's what's really going to serve us well today. And hey, by the way, we got Holly joining us from London in the UK. So welcome, Holly, for joining us. Paul, I had asked you this question just briefly once before, but I'd love for you to talk about it. You have this phrase that you're starting to talk about called push past impossible, right?
Yep.
That's really something you've been talking about. And what I asked you most recently was like, when was the first time in your life when you had to push past an impossible situation?
Well, I think like anyone in life, and especially as you go through life, there's always people, especially telling you, no, that's impossible. You can't do that. You shouldn't do that. That's crazy. All of those negative reinforcements that we tend to just absorb. I never really accepted the word impossible. I'd always thought, well, just wait, I'll show you. And so I think the very first time, and look, I'm not a person who believes that there are really impossibles. I firmly believe that certainly there are impossibles. I can't change my skin color. I can't change certain attributes of my personality or who I am. But I can't, there's lots maybe I can't do, but there's so many more things that you're told you shouldn't do or can't do that I actually think are just hard or, will be difficult, require compromise or sacrifice or learning or whatever. So the first one I can remember, I was in high school and I went to a unique high school where you didn't have formal classes. You learned at your own pace, which was heaven for me. And I kind of excelled a little too well. And I started to realize I was going to graduate in 2 years. And I already was young. So didn't really want to graduate high school at 16. So I said, well, can I just go away in the middle of my school year at the age of 16 to Central America on my own? And you can just imagine how many people said, no, that's impossible. Well, I did. And I spent 4 months visiting friends, family friends, I guess, in El Salvador, and finished learning Spanish at that time because that was really what I wanted to do. and still graduated in 2.5 years. So that was the first time I said, impossible just means watch me try.
You,
Yeah, I
you know,
might fail, but I'm going to try.
it's interesting. And by the way, we've had Shibo join us from Johannesburg, and I think it's Rishikesh from Niagara Falls, Canada. Oh, I'm so
Right
happy.
on.
Yeah. And Mohammed is going, wow, I think he's just heard your story. Your situation is almost akin to mine. I wish I'd have been in your high school, because I was so darn bored. Couldn't even see straight. It was like, oh, I remember telling my parents, my dad had not gone to college. He's a self-made. He's very successful, and my mother had gone to college for 2 years. I told him, I'm like, I want to graduate from college in 3 years. And they're like, no, no,
Mhm.
no, 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 you're not not going to do that. And all the stars aligned for me not to do that. Right. That same thing, like what you said, like people saying like, you can't do it. Is that, I think those were your words.
Mhm. Yes.
And what happened to me was, one day, my last semester, I mean, I was beside myself, because it was last semester. I was 1 credit short. It wasn't going to happen. I mean, people were cheering around me that I was going to have to stay like one more term, because I too was 16. And um, a man walked down the hall really fast toward me, and he, as I was very shy, so I just kind of kept moving over, and then he called out my name, which was Lori Jufrey at the time, and "Are you Lori Jufrey?" I'm like, "Yes," and he said, "I'm the band director, and Karen Momsen told me that you used to play the oboe, and we want to make a record album, vinyl, right? And we need 2 oboe players, and she said that you could join us." And I said, "I haven't played in 3 years." He goes, "We'll give you anything you want, an oboe for free, the reeds for free, a tutor, you name it." And I said, "A credit?" And he said, "Yes, I can do that." So I'm like you. And then I walked home, and, I said to my parents, "I'm going to graduate." They're like, "No." And I'm like, "Yes."
Exactly.
So do you know what? I'm trying to be curious. And by the way, I'm going to welcome a few more people, but I would like you to think about the following question as I welcome some folks. Like, what do you think it was about us as children? Because we were really young when we both did this, like, that really caused us to have this mentality. And I want to welcome Mohammed has joined us. Peter's joined us from Zimbabwe. And Mohammed has given us, and I think for everyone to join him on LinkedIn, he's given us his LinkedIn address. Thank you so much for doing that. But what do you think it was about our makeup, or our character, or our sensibilities, maybe, that made
Mm.
it acceptable? And by the way, Nazia asked, what are we talking about? And Nazia, the title of today's show is, Can We Push Past Impossible in a Virtual Workplace? But we're starting out by talking about our first experiences as children, when we were able to do things that people told us we couldn't do.
Yeah, and I think the answer to that for me is really quite clear. And I do speak about this when I keynote about pushing past impossible, because it's one of the foundational, I think, core values or principles that do help us get there. And for me, it was curiosity. I was an insanely curious person, probably from the moment I was born, and I just wanted to learn about, especially people, cultures different than mine. I was insanely curious about the world, and I'm glad to hear there's some listeners, especially from the continent of Africa, because I've spent almost 2 years of my life in that remarkable continent, and I've been to South Africa and Zimbabwe a number of times. So, yay for you! I'm glad you're here. So, I think curiosity was really what drove me to get out of the very traditional, very limiting culture that I came from in a very uh, boring part of Canada. They'd hate it if I said that, but for me it was. And I was in a very traditional school that didn't really promote curiosity. You just had to kind of follow along and do what everyone told you to do, and that never really kept me stimulated. So I've always said to myself, even though I understand it, there's more here. There's more out there. I need to know more. And I notice I'm breaking up. I don't know why.
Yeah, well,
Sorry about
we'll
that.
work through that, I think, as we do this today. But I have to smile as you say that. And by the way, we have someone who's joined us from Phoenix. I don't know who that is, but from Arizona. Welcome. Um, I remember my mother. We used to wash pots and pans by hand. Everything else would go into a dishwasher, and
Hmm.
I would. Each of us got a turn with her, and that was our private time. And one day, I think I must have asked her a bunch of questions because I was curious. And she looked at me and she said, "I'll give you any a trip to anywhere in the world if you'll just stop asking me questions." And I looked at her and I said, "I want a one-way ticket around the world." And she took the dish towel and she threw it into the sink and walked away because that meant I would come back.
Exactly.
Right? But, I sometimes wonder, my first graduate degree is in counseling psychology. I sometimes wonder, like, is it in our personality temperament that makes us curious, or is curiosity a skill that can actually be developed and learned? Because a lot of people who are likely listening in have young children. Or Virginia Asher has joined us too. Oh, she might be the one from Phoenix who's joined us. Um, so I don't know, right? I mean, if it's for some of us, I think it's a personality trait. For others, I think it's
Hmm.
truly a learned skill. But it's something that's often so. Let's take this into the workplace for just a second, and then I want to come back to
Hmm.
impossible, what the word impossible means to you. But that's dampened, right? I mean, it's like we're not allowed to always be curious in our roles and
Hmm.
in our work.
Right. And I would encourage people to rail against that because I think curiosity is actually also how we learn about the team people that we're working with. And the more that we know about each other, what happens? The more that we begin to understand each other, the more that we begin to see, wow, she's got a talent I didn't know. And we can leverage that talent and we can bring our team to a level of performance that we didn't expect because we have these gems within each person. And if you don't ask questions and you don't learn about each other's backgrounds, culture, history, family, perhaps religion, dynamic of the interplay between our culture and the culture that we are often stuck in or live in. And so I think curiosity is actually it is internal to many of us, but it's also a trait that we should develop even more acutely by being willing to ask questions, even if they seem silly. I don't believe there is a silly question.
Mhm.
And I believe that people love to share their stories or their development, who they are. And it's a fantastic way to increase the diversity and inclusion within our teams, within our organizations, because we all want to feel like we belong, like we're welcomed, like we're understood,
Yeah.
and that's a way to get there. So I encourage everyone to embrace curiosity like wholeheartedly, all in, go for it. And I believe it's integral to our fulfilling ourselves and learning about the world.
Well, and I think that as I listen to you talk about this high need for belongingness, the challenge I think with questions becomes how do we do so in a way that is more from a dialogue approach rather than a debate approach, right? Because
Hmm.
and you and I've talked about LinkedIn a little bit. I get very concerned on LinkedIn when instead of asking a question of curiosity, someone asks a question that provokes frustration or debate in another person, or starts out by saying, "I respectfully disagree." I'm like, really? You had to say that? I mean, there's a way to couch it differently, but I think that the skill set that's missing is the ability to dialogue and to be openly curious without, because what you're talking about is a curiosity that comes with no judgment, no
Correct.
evaluation,
Hmm.
complete an interest, right? A level of interest. Nadia mentioned the comment of the role of media and devices in our life sometimes. But it's just this. It's an engaging. I just want to engage with you. I mean, I've had to go on LinkedIn and on some of my posts. I had to actually put a comment that says all points of view will be accepted.
Mhm.
I mean, it's like, really, I have to say that, but I think that's the implication behind the surface. Would that be correct of your statement?
Well, I think that oddly, when someone says, because I get that all the time, and I actually encourage dialogue and I encourage debate. That's how innovation actually happens. If you
Hmm.
think about brainstorming, how do we get to an amazing result? Well, usually it's a little bit of her idea mixed with a little bit of his, mixed with that, wow, we never thought of it that way because someone's got a completely different approach. And so I think the differences of opinion are actually so critical to our analysis of a great innovative decision or innovative project plan. So when someone says they respectfully disagree, I actually encourage them to explain why. So
Yes.
just saying I respectfully disagree to me is just a an entry point to encouraging someone to explain. So tell me what's where you're coming from that makes you respectfully disagree. And the critical word is respect, which again is part of my approach to how you push past impossible. And if you, because you're going to need help to do that, and you're going to need others' help. And the only way to get that help is by ensuring that you're always respect first. And
Hmm.
if you can respectfully disagree, that's awesome as far as I'm concerned, because you're learning about each other's differences of opinion. And to me, that's again, how do we evolve and become people with our own opinions, our own perspectives? Part of it is because we compare those to others and they help us hone our own perspective.
Well, and but I think that the key there, and I want to come back to it, so I'm going to hold on it for a second, is how do we show respect? What do we mean by respect? But before we go further, I want to circle back to the word that's in the title of today's show. And by the way, for those of you who are listening, you are welcome to ask a question at any time. You're welcome to comment at any time. You're welcome to share your own examples with us. It's that level of engagement that I really love with these live shows. What does the word impossible mean to you?
Well, I think for many of us, and I'm not different here, it generally means a negative. It generally
Oh,
means something that you are told or you are led to believe you can't do, you can't achieve. It's not attainable. And I always go back to a profound experience that I had in Tanzania, of all places. And it's a long story, but I won't get into the details. But I'll just tell you that a person who has had an impact on my life that is so deep that it led me to write the books I've written. It led me to speak about things that have been very hard to speak about. But he is a Maasai person, so a member of the tribe, the Maasai tribe in Tanzania. He happened to be a safari guide that I met and became very good friends with. And when he was learning English, he said, I saw the word impossible, but I saw I'm possible. And he believes that the word impossible is actually a word he doesn't use. And I have taken that same perspective. I don't use that word except as a tool to help us divert from the negative and shift to the positive. And I think that his enlightenment is remarkable, for him to have seen I'm possible instead of impossible. And that's what I encourage people to do, is stop using impossible. Just stop and focus on, okay, it might be hard. It might take a long time. You might have to learn a bunch. You might have to compromise. You might have to spend time you didn't want to educating or training or doing things that require you to get to the point you need to in order to achieve whatever that goal that is supposedly impossible might be. But, so what? It's not impossible. I mean, really, most of the time, the things we're told are impossible aren't. And they're just hard, or other people wouldn't even dream of the kind of dream that you might have. And I encourage people to dream and to work hard to figure out, well, then how do I get there? That's the hard part.
well, I think though it goes back to a distinction that you made up front too. And I just want to come back to it because you said there are some things I I cannot change about myself, right?
Right.
And so I think it's the recognition of what can I not change, but sometimes people make that circle really big versus really small. And then the things
Right.
I have control over. And I happen to be one of those people, and you and I've never talked about this, but I happen to think that there's like another piece that kind of goes with this. And I don't mean to be woo woo about saying it, but there's also what I believe is a destiny that we are all
Mm.
destined toward. There's a reason for being, a reason d'etre on this planet in this lifetime, if you believe in that. And that part of the joy of figuring out, and I love that change from impossible to I'm possible. There's a real
Mhm.
mindset shift there, right? From one of scarcity to abundance, right? And I think that when you make that shift from it's scarce to being abundant, I'm possible. And if I just, because all it does is the same word, and I split them apart and I add an apostrophe. And then what you're saying is, how do I then step back into that world of abundance and say, given the gifts that I have, given what I might perceive to be my calling or what it is I'm meant to do, how, because some people have at a very young age an idea of what they're meant to do, and it's so far different from where they are. But then to say, what's that? How can my curiosity lead me there? And I'm also hearing you use the respect. And then what sorts of respect do I need along the way? Am I hearing correctly by tying together the pieces?
For sure. And so there's a couple other pieces to that puzzle, and I agree with exactly what you've said. I think the biggest reason that we don't pursue those dreams is fear. And we're afraid of success, we're afraid of failure, we're afraid of being perceived to be foolish, or trying to get something we don't deserve or that we'll never get because we are limited in many different ways. And I appreciate that. And fear is a giant motivator for many things. So the couple of the other components that I believe lead us to being able to push past impossible are Maasai cultural values. So I should just step back and tell you just how impossible certain parts of my life have turned out to not be. So I'm, by virtue of this incredible relationship that I've developed with the Maasai people over time, I have become adopted. I am an official member of the Maasai tribe, one of the tribes, the groups within Tanzania. And I am an elder and I'm a respected member of the tribe. So, is that impossible? Sure as hell it is for most people. And I have this like ridiculous privilege and honor of being part of this culture. So again, and the Maasai have taught me how have they survived for literally millennia. And how have they been through what are really impossible things like droughts,
Yeah.
tribal conflicts, colonization, famine, sandstorms, whatever it might be? Well, they do it through ancient values that they've realized really do make the difference between, in some cases, life and death. And they're based on sort of four really core values. The first is respect.
Okay.
Respect first is their number one reason why when conflicts occur, they believe in compromise. They believe in talking, listening, working together to find a solution. So it's not a war. It's no, let's sit down and talk.
Hmm.
They believe in courage, and it does take an awful lot of courage to fight past fear, to deal with very challenging situations. And so it will take courage to push past impossible, for sure. And they believe in strength. It will take strength. It will take strength of character. It will push you in places that are uncomfortable. It will make you feel at times that you're trying to swim up a giant river that you can't navigate. That's okay. That's part of the experience. And then it takes goodness. You need help from others. And strength is not, I'm doing this alone. Strength is saying, I need help. Please come and help me. And it's also helping others. So the goodness is that as a community, constantly look at each other and ask themselves, how do I help you and indirectly benefit our community? And but it's focused on, I'm this is not a selfish world. We need to get through this together because our community is bound with to each other. And that's how we've survived forever. And so I've taken those values and added my experience in the value of curiosity to create what I believe is the way for many of us to find a way past the impossibilities in our life, whatever they are, because they could be very simple. It could be, I'm in a very ugly relationship. It could be, I don't like my job. It could be, I want to do more and be more educated. I need some training. It could be, I don't, the team that I'm working with has a dysfunctional workplace culture. All of these things feel like they're out of our control. They're in some cases kind of we just can't do them. And I argue that the adventure is the journey. Try, and you'd be astonished where you might end up. And if you can apply those five sort of principles, I really believe that you may still not get to where you thought you wanted to, but you'll probably get to a better place regardless. And it may be way better. So that's kind of my philosophy.
So I want to come back, and I'm actually going to start. We've talked a little bit about curiosity, but I want to start at the end because when you use the word goodness and about how do I help others, I kind of had this momentary aha. Um, and I'm going to harken back to LinkedIn because that's how we're all kind of connected here with it.
Absolutely.
And to the words I used earlier about scarcity and abundance. I'm starting to recognize as I travel the world, and I've been blessed as you are to speak in, well, we were speaking in other countries physically.
Yes.
We're not anymore, and I was blessed, for example, last September to speak in Cape Town. And I was to go to Brussels. That's not going to happen this October. But this issue of goodness, and it's interesting because when I invite people to connect with me, I will sometimes get back a thank you, not from all people, but from some people that says
Mhm.
immediately, how can I help you? And culturally, I'm a bit taken aback uh, because I think to myself, is that just a pet phrase? Because in the US, it's kind of, for me culturally, it's a pet phrase. But if I think about it from what you've just told me, it for some people could be the way of life. And that's truly, even though
Absolutely.
I don't know you yet, but how can I help you? And I'm going to reinterpret those comments because yesterday for my birthday, I mean, I got so many just in you. Evidently, the way LinkedIn sets it up is all the birthday messages come individually to you instead of like being on
Yeah.
one post. And even people, when they said happy birthday, some of them said, how can I help you? And they were, I have to tell you, they were almost all from the continent of Africa and some from Asia. I mean, when
Mhm.
I think about it today, so this is like a real life, like, aha for me, that I didn't realize that that could be a way of being. You right? That's what you're telling us is a way of being,
Absolutely.
but it's not. But it's not for some people. I mean, I got to tell you that COVID, for example, has made me realize that the stereotypes some countries have of Americans is indeed true. We are selfish. We are
Mhm.
self-absorbed. We really sometimes don't care. We're into a mental model of scarcity and fear. I gotta tell you, most people are. At least we're in my circle, and it's really sad. And so, how do I?
Mhm.
But for goodness, I mean, my first thought is, what would I do? How would I even find the people in my life that exemplify that, or do I have to exemplify it first? I guess.
Well, isn't that a great leadership question? I think we have to lead with the values that we believe leadership it makes a leader successful. And I think we that leading by example is absolutely always the best way to go. You set the stage for the people around you to behave by behaving well. and by holding yourself accountable for behaving well. And I'm not saying you can't have a bad day. We all get a get out of jail free card every now and then for a bad day. But what I'm getting at is, for me, this is foundational to how I behave in the world and how I live in the world. And I've had the privilege, and I know it's a privilege, of intersecting with many, many cultures. And I've always learned from everybody little tidbits that I've taken along the way and sort of snapped on to my beliefs and my values. And so when I talk about goodness, and I think that what's important is to remember that selfishness isn't a core value that is positive. It usually limits us, and it usually, in fact, puts walls up around us that we may not even know, but they are there. And so I think, for example, during COVID, when most people find me usually because they've been experiencing some dysfunctional workplace scenario, whether it be bullying or harassment or just typical, bad behavior at work, and they don't know what to do or how to approach it or how to plan to get through it. And one of the very first things I do is say, I can help you. If I'd be happy to help you. And let me start by sending you a book. And I sent thousands of books to people for free. I just send them a PDF of the book via email. And usually that's a really honest and sincere step in learning to be open to helping others. You never, ever know how that "can I help you" could change someone else's day or moment or trajectory, their life. And this is again how my Maasai brother, Abby, who I talked about earlier, he's the perfect example. When I was going through a really awful situation that related to workplace bullying, and I didn't know which way was up. I was off work. I had been diagnosed with severe post-traumatic stress. I was a train wreck. And I had no idea how I was ever going to get out of this pit, because I was stuck and I was miserable and I was beyond depressed. And he didn't know anything about bullying or anything about what is a corporate lawyer or what is a 55-story tower that you work in. He couldn't imagine, but he kept sending me 3-word emails, and I'm not kidding you. And they said, "Come home, brother." And that sounds insane, but I did leave Canada, leave my family, leave my medical team, against everyone screaming at me that I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I went to Tanzania, and I didn't know how long I was going to go there. I just knew that if I was there, I wouldn't be stuck in the same scenario of getting out of bed every day and looking at the same mess that my life had become. And everything was impossible then. Getting out of bed was impossible. And by sending me 3 words, he opened the door to the rest of my life. And I'm telling you the absolute truth. Because had I not done that, I would not have been able to get past this. I would not have learned certain skills that I could never have imagined that his people would teach me. I was able to be embraced by people who didn't care that I was X or Y or white or a lawyer or important or whatever the heck we might judge each other by. They didn't care. They cared that I was a human suffering who needed help and kindness. And it changed my life. And so it's through them that I learned, okay, I'm going to come home and write a book or 2 about this. And that led to the odd interview, and then the podcasts, and then the articles, and then, holy cow, would you come and speak to us about this? And 5 years later, here I am. And I then turned around and helped the Maasai people, because I have some background in tourism. Oddly, that sounds strange, but my parents had a tour company for decades,
Wow.
which I helped run. And that's how I ended up in Tanzania the very first time. I was guiding one of their trips. And I, Abby had a dream. And the dream was to start the only Maasai owned safari company in Africa, owned by the tribe, employed tribal people, and helped his community. And we did. And it was impossible. Everyone was telling him, "This, you can't do this. The Maasai aren't business people. They don't know how to run a company. They work for our companies. They don't run them." Well,
Oh,
that's not true.
oh,
And so we've been able to do the impossible, including, and I credit him, I just was a tool to help him get there. He thought, women don't have a chance in my culture. I want to give them a chance. So they created the only women's safari guides that are Maasai, and they have women's safari programs. Or your family can say, "We'd like a woman safari guide, not the same men." And so these are like profound things that, by him offering me kindness, I was able to play it forward, if you want to call it that, pay it forward. But it was nothing. I didn't, for me, it was just, you gave me life. You gave me a future. I need to do the same, and watch you just expand, and watch you flourish, and watch you turn things that are impossible for you into I'm possible. So you just never know. Back to the, can I help you?
well,
You just never know.
and what I'm hearing you say, I have to admit, as I think about the 5, and for those who have joined us halfway along, they have to do with respect, courage, strength of character, goodness, and then Paul has added, to the Maasai, values, curiosity. I wonder, as you share this beautiful experience, which has multiplied numerous times in all different sorts of ways for you and for other people, and I'm certain it's just had this domino effect. If the
Mm-hmm.
goodness piece, I mean, respect and goodness, they say respect first, but it's the respect and goodness when combined together. I open my doors to you. I open my
Mm-hmm.
doors. I think back, um, a few years ago when I started, to really dive into the work that I'm doing today, which I call data literacy 2.0. And I gave a keynote talk to like 1,000 CFOs, and it was before the time that the CFOs were really ready to hear it. So I mean, because someone was forward thinking, oh, you can get on this stage and you can speak, and I didn't get all the positive feedback that I might get today. Um, I called a colleague of mine and I told him what had happened, and he said to me, if you continue to do what you're doing, you're going to go bankrupt. And I said to him, whose fear is that? Number one,
Exactly.
it's not my fear, it's your fear for me. I said, I have been homeless. And I've been homeless not that many years ago. Let's go back to 2012. I said, and I have lived through that. I said, all I'm looking for, and I think the reason I called him was I was looking for goodness. I was like seeking help. I didn't know what sort of help I wanted, but that wasn't what I received. Instead, what I received was, you're just working on impossible. Not I did what you did early on in your life, as I said, the heck with you. I'll
Mm-hmm.
show you, you know. And by the way, John Wiedner said that you have an amazing story, and he wanted to thank you for sharing it.
Oh, thank you.
And it is amazing. But I just get this sense, it's as the wheels are turning in my mind, that if we all open ourselves up to helping others with no expectation of anything, his invitation, I mean, who invites someone to their country? Who invites someone to their home? Who invites someone to live with them? Now, you've experienced it. I actually have experienced that too, because when I was homeless, people did. I had someone actually say to me, "You're going to come live with me. You're gonna
Exactly.
you're gonna I figured it out for you. You're coming to live with me." And I said, "How do you know this?" They just said, "I know." I said, I can't do anything. I can't pay you. I can't do anything." And they're like, "It doesn't matter. You're coming to live with me."
Mm-hmm.
Right? These are really amazing individuals. Now, we're not saying that everybody who's listening to us should open their doors. I don't think. Or maybe we are. I'll
No,
let
not
you
at
open
all.
the door for us next time, Paul.
How about your heart? How about opening your heart first and
Yes.
simply, an offer to help someone doesn't necessarily mean something as profound as the immense, beautiful things that I've had, just such a privilege to have enjoyed. But I think they start from the same place, which is sincerity, non-judgmental, need, and not with an expectation of anything, whether it's anything. It could just be, I don't need help. Cool, but no, I'm here if you do. It may be, God, I need your help so bad that I don't even know where to start. Well, I think you might have found someone who can maybe help you find your way. Knowing that when we do that, we're not solving someone else's problem. We're not taking over their lives or over control of their issues. We're simply offering a perspective that may hopefully give them a chance to get through whatever the impossible they are dealing with. And my experience is that whenever I open myself up to being vulnerable, expressing really difficult things that for me are sort of my hidden secrets, or the things that I'm embarrassed by, humiliated by, like being a victim of a workplace bully, which was very hard for me and even my ego to absorb. That how could I be, this tough a lawyer, be bullied to the point where I had to quit work and could never go back, and was more or less in medical care that what was profoundly real. But to be able to talk about that now has opened doors that you just can't imagine. And by expressing those issues, you give others a chance to feel the permission to do the same. And so again, when you offer help to people, you may be giving them a lifeline that you could never, ever imagine. And the whole point is, isn't that life? Isn't that wonderful? And being able to impact others by simply saying, I'm here. I don't know how I can help, but I'm here, has for me been life altering. And that's how I live now. And I know it does freak people out for sure, especially on LinkedIn, because I now have a quick response outreach to everyone. And I'm honest and sincere. If anyone wants to learn, if anyone's struggling with bad behavior in a virtual workplace, or they need some guides and rules and things that they don't have because they haven't planned for this, I say, anyone who wants a book, just hit me up. You got one. And it's been so cool. I've given away hundreds of books. But what's way more important is that people have felt like there's a network of family out there that does care, and that we're in this together. This COVID thing, it's
Yeah.
as global as it gets. We're all in this, and we can choose to be incredibly afraid for good reason. We can choose to be limited, or we can choose to be open to, how do I get through this? And I'm going to need help. And if we can come together as more of a team and get through this and help each other, I think the whole world's going to be better off. Because boundaries and borders are irrelevant to a virus, and workplaces are irrelevant. Your status is irrelevant. Your age is irrelevant. All of the things that we normally believe separate us from each other don't matter right now.
Right.
And for me, this is an unbelievable opportunity for us to break down some of those barriers of separation and actually just treat each other like each other. just like people, humans. Sounds so simple, but it is.
Yeah.
It's hard to do though for all of us, because there's this like fear. Well, if I reach out, I'm putting myself at risk. Well, How? If it doesn't work out, so what? If people don't want help, that's cool. You don't, there's nothing to be like in my, I just because I have no expectation that it's a sincere offer. It doesn't matter whether the offer is taken or not. That's irrelevant. It's just that I really mean it. And the people that are willing to get help or ask for help in return, that's the door. And you just, like I said, I've been impacted by the most unexpected people. Who could possibly imagine that this guy that is in, looks like me, that's my age, comes from this totally different world, could have his life so profoundly positively impacted by a safari guide in Tanzania who's 25 years younger than me and who I could now consider with immense honor and privilege as my brother. His people are my family. His family is my family. And that sounds absurd, but it is true. And
Yeah.
they don't believe that family means blood. They mean family means you are important to us. And I know it's shared. You're an equal. All of the things that we think mean that we can't be equal, those are fabrications.
Yeah.
Those are created.
Well, I think it's as I listen to the the learnings that for you have come out of this, and what I really love about what you say is it's an opening up of your heart. It's an offer of goodness. People may or may not accept it, but it has to come from a place of just pure giving. I have had, I mean, the other side of this is like for me, I offer people videos that I've done over the past couple of months or past couple of years because I'm better with the, I mean, I've written a lot of books, but I'm better with the spoken word sometimes in terms of the immediate work I do. I've actually had someone get really upset with me and say, "You're trying to sell me." I said, "I don't have any, I'm not selling anything right now.
Mm,
If I could, I would. I'm a keynote speaker.
yeah.
I don't have anything to sell." You know, I just like I heard you say you have this issue, and I'm just offering this to you. There's nothing that goes with it. And Anthony just joined us from Scotland. And I think that's the other side, right? The coin is how do people interpret this? Because I sometimes pull back when people offer, but I think that what I often even say to people is when you say to someone, um, how can I help you? And they might not know. I sometimes say, here are a few things I think I might be able to help you with.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, it's like I just kinda seed it a little bit to s because that also for people who are concerned about boundaries or being used, and I mean, right, that those are where our fears come in.
Hmm.
It kind of sets a contextual stage, you know, and I might say to someone, "I'm happy to have, a one-on-one, Zoom call with you. I'm, you know, happy to work you through an issue, by email or by phone or some other way." Um, in my building, I'm afraid I can't, like where I live, I can't open my doors like you do. I could open my doors for about 2 weeks, but we have rules in my building. But I'm just saying, right? I have to be mindful too. I mean, they'd be saying to me like,
Absolutely.
right, you know, but I don't think that's what you're talking about.
Mm-mm.
It's about it's here. It's here. It's I'm in giving from the core of my being, right? I'm giving from the core of
Completely.
my
Um,
it's because of
it
the
is
respect that I
it is
have for you
exactly
as a
that.
is that it?
Exactly. And well, and because I am a human who has feelings and has suffered and knows what it feels like to not be treated well, we all have been disrespected in our lives. And I use a quote a lot because it actually has also been a driver for why I do what I do. And that is Maya Angelou. For those of you who might not know her, she was a poet laureate from America, a remarkable woman
Yeah.
who is no longer with us. But I had the privilege of seeing her live once, and I have to say, again, certain events in your life are like a tattoo, good or bad, And sometimes that tattoo you just take with you with pride. And she said, people will forget what you say, and they may likely forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And you know, and if it's a bad feeling, I have to tell you, we are even less likely to forget it. We hold that resentment, we hold that anger, we hold that negative feeling because we've been disrespected or badly treated. So that has really inspired me to take that seriously. And so when I offer help or just any kind of open-hearted advice, it's also in alignment with people don't even the fact that that offer by in itself could be the difference between someone feeling like they are cared for then or not.
Hmm.
And you just, again, I have been so lucky to have had these very unexpected people have such a profound impact on me in the most bizarre and almost unheard of circumstances. Yet, if I hadn't been open to that and I hadn't been vulnerable to listening, oh my God, I do need help. I need help really badly. And when you embrace that, I mean, you just don't know what the possibilities might be. And I'm a testament to impossible. Yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm just not. Um, and that may sound very strange to people, but my life has proven to me that I can I can generally push past impossible if I am patient, courageous, strong, curious, respectful, and not only ask for help, but give help openly and sincerely and authentically every chance I can.
Yeah.
And you'd be astonished at what a community can get done. I mean, there's a saying that we all use: it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to do something profound. It does. How big
Yes, it
is your
does.
village? Your village is as big as you make it.
Right. Right.
And LinkedIn is a good example. I treat LinkedIn as my village. They're a strange form of family, of community. And I never ever stop learning from those people in my community. And so social media has some really amazing opportunities for us to learn from each other at our own time, free. Um, and this is what I believe humanity flourishes on, and we just need chances to do it more. But we first have to be the leader to start that ball rolling down whatever hill there is.
Right.
So
So
that takes, you know, the simple: I'm vulnerable, I'm real, and hey, can I help? I may not have your answer, but maybe just talking this out will help you feel like you're not alone or powerless.
yes. So I just wanted, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but in the few minutes we have left, to see if the audience has any questions. I haven't gotten any questions from anyone, either that or it's not coming through on my feed here. But if for those of you who are listening, if you have questions or comments or things you'd like to ask Paul in the last 5 to 6 minutes of our show, please let me know, because this is not just me directing the conversation, but it's also you getting what you need out of this as well. And you have been just unbelievable, Paul, today, and sharing your experiences, which is a way of giving. Um,
Well, thank you. I'm far from unbelievable and I'm far from special. I'm just an average guy who's had incredible experiences, and that I consider blessings, and that have led me to have a much, much richer life that sometimes I don't even I wonder, how did I get so lucky? And the only answer I have is I just did. And I'm grateful. And I want to pay that forward every chance that I can, because I may be able to have that kind of impact on someone right now. You
Mhm.
just have to be open to being um, being that person that reaches out.
Mhm. But, I think that what you've also, said is it's not been a life that's been easy. I mean, it's been a
Yeah.
life where you have had to persevere, and I know this for those of you who are interested in Paul's bullying story in his book, I encourage you to reach out to him because the story and the experience is, I have heard it many times, and each time I hear it, it brings me new insight into how we need to treat each other and sometimes the subtleness of the behaviors that people exhibit towards us that are really cruel. Um, right. But it's that I
Hmm.
think so that you've had to persevere, you've had to get past the impossible. But I think that what you're sharing is that it's because of it's one man. I mean, I think that's what we have to really
Exactly.
take away from this, is that we sometimes think that we are not important, we don't have a voice, we don't matter. If we didn't exist, the world wouldn't miss us. I mean, there's lots of ways. I think about those things all the time. And maybe I'm just strange, but they enter my stream of consciousness
No.
when I'm reflecting. And yet, I mean, I got a letter 2 days ago from a woman who hearkened back to a 2006 book of mine. And she said, I want to tell you, because of the 3 years that you took to write this, which I know that she knows the backstory of how, I'd saved enough money for a year and then it was 2 more years and 200 people and 2 people died on the book project. And oh my gosh, I mean, it was a mess like big mess. And she said, "But let me tell you how that one book changed people's lives in a healthcare institution. I've never told you the story."
Hmm.
And it's that. I mean, we just don't know. And so we may never hear about I mean, you and Abby are able to share the impact of what you've done, but sometimes we don't know the impact of what the giving is. I mean, we're now talking what? This is 2020. So 14 years later, this woman is telling me this experience. I mean, part of me is
Exactly.
I mean, I'd have liked to have heard it sooner. I told her she made my day, but it's like, because there's that part of me that's like, it just sometimes it really helps to motivate you to keep on giving. Like, does it really make a difference? But I think that's what you're saying is never doubt. Never doubt that
Never doubt.
never doubt that you're giving. Because I'm trying to, I mean, as I'm teasing out the lessons here, never doubt, always be open, be willing, also be accepting of the help that other people give you, that goodness. Be respectful of it when given to you, right? And when you take it back in return. And then to have the courage. I mean, because courage goes in there too. I mean, the courage to see past some of your fears. I mean, I'm wrapping up. I'm not getting questions, so I don't know if my feed is just not showing questions. If there are some, I'm sorry. I'm not getting anything through here on StreamYard. To tell me that of what people are thinking. So it may be that I don't have my other computer open to check. But in the few minutes that we do have left, Paul, I'm just curious if there's like one more like insight or comment in the next 60 seconds that you would like to share with us that just kind of wraps everything together into a package for my listeners.
Well, the only thing I would say is, if we if we could just open ourselves up to the possibility of seeing impossible as I'm possible, just that fundamental shift in perspective could change your trajectory in life. And
Hmm.
it may not be a big change, but I am pretty sure that it will be better than sticking with the limiting perspective of that I can't, shouldn't, um, and don't have any power or control, or to make a change, to do something different, to get past a barrier, or a reason to not be or do something. And I just encourage everyone to try to change their perspective one day at a time. And and to you'll just never know what happens, and that's the part of the adventure. You may not see the result tomorrow. You may not see it next month. You may not see it even this year. But isn't that fun that you're working past it and you're evolving as a human and you're probably becoming a better person and I expect a better leader. And that's what's important in our workplaces. It's important in life, but it's important to us as humans. So I just encourage you all to, I mean, connect with me. For no other reason than to just be part of my gang of impossible pushers, because we have a lot of fun. And if anyone out there is aware of themselves or others who are struggling with workplace bullying, harassment, intimidation, any of those hideous things, then I really encourage you to get in touch with me. I will not only I'll send you a book. That's an understatement. But I mean it. I'm your cheerleader. I will. You'll get through it because you won't make the mistakes I made, and you'll learn from someone who made way too many mistakes, and hopefully you'll be able to get through it faster and and be better for it.
Absolutely. That's a very kind and generous offer on your part. And I absolutely love, I'm not going to forget this, that the word impossible really means I'm possible.
It does.
So I am, this hour has flown by, Paul. I am so
Mhm.
grateful for you sharing your experiences, your insights, your wisdoms, your learnings with us and in such a vulnerable manner so that people can also learn because it's who you are as a person that I think to me is why I know you and I will know you forever. That's me.
Oh,
If you'll have me as your friend.
and aren't I lucky? You know,
Thank
that's
you.
very mutual. And thank you for giving me the chance to even speak to your family of wonderful people and followers. And ultimately, that's what we are: community, family, a gang of people who hopefully will help each other get to the next level, whatever the heck that means for each of us. So go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this show will be archived on YouTube, and on the YouTube page itself will be a list of Paul's books, his LinkedIn address, and other ways of reaching him, so that you have that information accessible at all times. Thank you so much for joining us today for episode 16 of Level Up with Lori. Can we push past impossible in a virtual workplace with Paul Peltier? Thank you.
Thank you.